Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. We're jumping straight in today because we've got a lot of ground to cover. We're looking at a single, literally explosive event that went down on July 30th, 2026. A Russian missile crashed deep inside Polish territory. But what we're really unpacking today isn't just a crater in a field. It's how that one physical impact exposes incredibly complex layers of Polish diplomacy, domestic politics, and society. We're looking at how external threats are acting as a massive pressure cooker on a nation that's already dealing with some profound internal shifts. Here is our roadmap for today. First, the missile incident itself, and then we'll backtrack slightly to the Lublin summit. After that, we'll dive into the domestic political turmoil, the rising social tensions, and finally, shifting public opinion. Section 1. The missile incident. 90. That's 90 kilometers. That is exactly how deep inside Polish territory this missile managed to penetrate before it finally crashed. It carved out a massive 10-meter crater in an undeveloped field near Tarnowa, Colonia. Now, we've seen other objects cross the border since 2022, including that absolutely tragic incident that killed 2 farmers. But a strike 90 kilometers deep? That is a massive, massive escalation. To really grasp this, we got to look at the crazy 24 hours right before impact. July 29th, daytime. Ukrainian President Zelensky meets with Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk in Lublin. Fast forward to that night, a major political earthquake fractures the Polish parliament. Then bam, early hours of July 30th, 3:40 a.m., Polish military radar picks up an unidentified object. F-16 fighter jets scramble immediately, but within minutes, it vanishes from the screen. At 4 a.m., residents hear a blast that literally rattles their windows as the missile hits the dirt. So what exactly was it? Officials confirmed it was a Russian K-101. For context, that's a strategic, air-launched cruise missile, usually dropped from heavy bombers. It officially violated NATO airspace as part of a horrifying, massive Russian barrage on Ukraine. We're talking over 70 missiles and 280 drones. Prime Minister Tusk was quick to clarify that Polish forces were fully locked on and completely ready to shoot it down if it had continued its flight. Section 2. The Lublin summit. Let's rewind just a few hours before the strike. Zelensky and Tusk were actually meeting to patch up some seriously frayed diplomatic relations from earlier in the summer. And the core of that tension? It's deeply historical. It centers on the UPA, the Ukrainian insurgent army from World War II. Ukraine recently honored them by naming a military unit after them, but in Poland, the UPA is remembered for carrying out horrific wartime massacres against Poles. This dispute got so heated recently that Polish President Karol Nawrocki actually revoked Zelensky's Order of the White Eagle. And guys, that is Poland's absolute highest state honor. But despite all that heavy historical baggage, Tusk delivered a super pragmatic message at the summit. I'll read his quote here. When we talk about continued support for Ukraine, we are not doing so merely out of solidarity, but first and foremost because this has a direct impact on Poland's security. He is basically drawing a hard line in the sand, saying, look, joint defense, like their discussions about producing Patriot interceptor missiles right in Poland, that has to take priority over historical sentimentality.
Section 3. Domestic political turmoil.
Meanwhile, let's pull back from international diplomacy and look at Warsaw. The conservative opposition is fracturing right down the middle. On one side, you've got Jarosław Kaczyński's Law and Justice Party, or PiS, doubling down on a traditional nationalist base and demanding total party loyalty. On the flip side, former Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki just launched a breakaway parliamentary caucus called Development Plus. His angle? He wants a moderate, pro-growth platform specifically designed to pull in younger voters and entrepreneurs. And the scale of this split? 40. Morawiecki took 40 MPs and 1 senator right out the door with him. Kaczynski's camp demanded they sign loyalty pledges and, cut ties with outside groups, and they just flat out refused. So effectively, dozens of politicians just walked away from the main party structure. So why does this matter? Well, it's a massive headache for the upcoming 2027 parliamentary elections. The conservative vote is splintering, sure, but polling shows Tusk's governing coalition still doesn't have a majority either. It's kind of a perfect storm. Right when Poland is facing literal missiles crossing its borders, its internal politics are completely up in the air. Everyone is scrambling for a clear mandate. Section 4. Rising social tensions. Now let's step out of the parliament and onto the streets, because the data here is, well, it's sobering. Think back to 2022 when Ukrainians were welcomed with open arms. Now look at this. In all of 2024, there were 267 police reports of hate crimes against Ukrainians. Fast forward to just the first half of 2026, we're already at 180. That is a 30% jump compared to the exact same time frame last year. Hostility is undeniably on the rise. And these aren't just numbers on a chart. We're talking about real, terrifying incidents playing out. A Ukrainian couple was brutally assaulted by 3 men in Wrocław, an attack that was filmed and went totally viral. In Poznan, a 60-year-old Polish man was beaten at a tram stop just because he stepped in to protect a Ukrainian boy from verbal abuse. And in Bielsko-Biała, 2 11-year-old girls were filmed being insulted purely because of their nationality. Prime Minister Tusk absolutely did not mince words here. He came out swinging, saying anyone who commits such vile acts is acting directly against Poland's interests. You are working against Poland, in favor of Russia. He's making a direct link. He's saying these aren't just isolated domestic crimes. They are the result of Russian disinformation deliberately trying to exploit tensions and rot the country from the inside out. Section 5. Shifting public opinion. So, zooming out to the big picture, how is the Polish public at large reacting to all of this? You've got history bubbling up, diplomatic spats, economic exhaustion, and literal missiles falling from the sky. How much has that ironclad solidarity from 2022 actually changed? Well, remember that UPA dispute we just talked about? A full 55% majority of Poles actually back their president's call to strip Zelensky of the Order of the White Eagle. That means over half the country feels that holding the line on historical accountability is actually more important right now than present-day wartime solidarity. And when it comes to actual policy, the shift is even wilder. According to CBO's polling, opposition to Ukraine joining the EU has spiked drastically. Back in 2023, only 17% opposed it. Today, that opposition has skyrocketed to a record high of 40%. On top of that, the folks who wanted Ukraine in the EU as soon as possible, that group basically collapsed from 18% down to just 9%. Opinia24 data backs this up too. 52% outright oppose helping Ukraine's EU bid. A massive 65% are saying no way to sending Polish troops to oversee any post-war ceasefire. And honestly, the most telling stat, 36% openly say their views on Ukrainians have just gotten worse since the invasion started. The numbers don't lie. That incredible 2022 solidarity is slowly, but very measurably, slipping away. Conclusion: the crossroads. So let's tie this all together. Prime Minister Tusk and the Polish government are stuck in an absolute pressure cooker, basically juggling 3 massive interconnected challenges. 1, securing the borders against very real military strikes like we saw with the K-101. 2, managing a super delicate diplomatic tightrope with Kyiv over historical disputes. And 3, trying to navigate this totally chaotic, fractured political landscape to somehow build a mandate for 2027. Which brings us to the big question we've got to end on today. Ask yourself, as public support starts to waver, social tensions heat up, and domestic politics completely fracture, how on earth will Poland balance securing its own borders with being Ukraine's most vital ally in the lead-up to 2027? Honestly, the answer to that won't just shape Poland. It's going to define the entire future of European security. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep asking the big questions.